Have you ever thought, is this just me when struggling to stay organized, start tasks, or manage time? For those of us over 50, these challenges might not be just aging. They could be ADHD hiding in plain sight for decades. I'm Jami Shapiro, host of Grandma Has ADHD, and I'm building a community where your experiences matter. Whether you're diagnosed, questioning, or simply curious, you're not alone. Our Facebook group is filled with vibrant, understanding people over 50 who share their stories, strategies, and yes, even their struggles, with plenty of laughter along the way. Ready to find your people? Join our growing Grandma Has ADHD Facebook community. Please like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen and share it with someone who might need to hear they're not alone, because ADHD doesn't have an age limit and neither does understanding yourself better. Together, we're changing the conversation about ADHD after 50. Come be part of the story.
Hi, I am back with another episode of Grandma Has ADHD. And just like all of them are special episodes, this is an especially special episode because we have a return guest who actually, as soon as we did the podcast, asked if she could do it again. And given that she is one of my favorite cousins and I was the flower girl in her wedding, I could not say no, but she is not only a family member with ADHD, she is a grandma and a therapist. And she felt like there was a lot that she didn't say. And so when she asked, I said, of course. So welcome, Dr. Jane Rosen Grandon, or as I like to say, Cousin Jane, or the Zoo Wrangler.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for having me back on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so happy. First of all, I have to tell everybody why I call you the zoo. So growing up, Jane always had like a bazillion animals in her house. And even as a young child, I was creative and started my letters to her, Dear Zoo. So that is my special nickname for her. And her special nickname for me is Jamila. I think you're the only person who calls me Jamila. When Brian tried to use it, and I said, absolutely not. I cannot have you calling me Jamila. That doesn't feel right. Feels icky.
Well, good.
So first of all, if you guys have not heard the first episode where I introduced my cousin Jane, I will share that she is an author and a therapist who went back to school in her 40s to get her PhD. She's quite impressive. And one of her specialties is marriage and the family. And Jane, I don't remember the title of your book, but I've definitely read it and I remember bits and pieces. But if you want to hear more about Jane, I'm going to click the link to the first episode in the show notes. But Jane, if you want to tell a little bit more to the audience just before we get started, in case they haven't heard that one and they're not going chronologically.
In case they have not heard
the first episode that we recorded, part one.
I think you're talking about my book, Keeping Love Alive.
Yes, that is what I'm talking about.
And I really had a lot of fun writing that. And as you know, I've been married 51 years. And the things that I really think there's something to be said about ADHD and marriage, whether it's ADHD or whether it's ADD. I think that it's not a simple topic because it really is something that affects us on a daily basis. And in particular, I think that it's a very personal issue in couples. That people fight about housework, being on time, remembering to call, keeping organized, all kinds of things that people struggle with. And very often, as we know, ADHD plays a role in that.
It definitely does. It definitely did in my marriage. So what was it that made you decide that, I know you loved me, but we could talk on the phone. What was it that made you decide that you wanted to come back and do another episode of Grandma Has ADHD?
Well, I kind of alluded to communication issues. And I wanted to share with people that one of the things that we do as grown up and growing up people is we're trying to understand ourselves. And some of us specialize in our submodalities, they call them. Our ability, we really are seers. We see. Some of us hear, we learn by learning. Some of us learn by doing. And some of us learn by smell or by taste, the other senses. But the thing is that all of these really play a role in marriage because, say, you are an auditory person and you are all about hearing and listening and responding to words and putting words in order in your head. But you have a spouse that is very visual. You go to a museum and come out of it, and your maid says, "Did you see all of that?" And if you're an auditory person, maybe you really didn't see it, but you heard it all. You heard it. So we have these really basic differences, and we can have the same experience with our spouse and have completely different takes on things. And so when it comes to things like housework, when it comes to things like staying neat, when it comes to things like cooking or preparing things or keeping things organized, it's really important to understand how we specialize. What are our special powers? That has a lot to do with our senses. Also, I think that some we touched on was a little respect for this, whether it's ADD, ADHD, neurodivergence. Respect meaning not to criticize, not to use it against each other. And I find that happens a lot is that certainly in unhappy couples, if there's a diagnosis that becomes known, it can become weaponized or it can become the greatest asset you ever had so that you finally understand what's going on.
Absolutely. I have the benefit, I guess you can say that. I have two long-term relationships. One is before my ADHD diagnosis, and the other is after my ADHD diagnosis. And, Jane, I actually would call you and ask for advice. I was married for 15 years, and you notice I haven't called you for advice this time, right?
True.
And we've been together for 5 years, lived together for 2. And the difference is, and now I have an understanding of what my limitations are. And like, for instance, one of the things that I noticed in my marriage was that I had a lot more energy than my partner who was the same age as I was. And I remember there was a battle for us because he could not keep up. And I thought he was lazy and he thought I couldn't give him the quality time that he needed because I couldn't sit still. And now in this relationship, we recognize that we have very different energy levels. I'm actually fine type. I have hyperactive ADHD as well as an attentive. And I realize that I am probably not going to find a partner who can keep up with me. And so now we just know each other's energy levels and I let him do his thing and he lets me do mine. And that's not an issue. Also, just housework. I could never keep it together in my marriage. And I always felt like I was like juggling so many balls and dropping so many balls. And that definitely took its toll on the way that the household ran. And now I'm much more aware of what my limitations are. I'm trying not to bite off more than I can chew. And I'm asking for help. I also have a partner who is acknowledging that I need the help and he's not making me feel, to your point, bad about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we have all different levels of cleanliness, but I think especially, as you say, we really need help. Many, many years ago, people didn't have 2 and 3 jobs that they were working or a full-time career and children and getting those kids to school and all the other kind of things that people have to juggle these days. And it might have been possible to get it all done, but now it is quite difficult. And the thing is that we're also battling on the other side of this burnout. People getting just burned out from having too many things to keep up with. So very often it comes across as, you just don't want to do it, or you just can't keep up with your life, eh? And it's highly critical, and it really leads to a lot of defensiveness in relationships and lack of understanding, but people need help. I'm all about people hiring extra people to help them out in their lives. I want to do that. And yet we're really juggling a lot of balls in the air.
We really are. And I would also say that I'm sure that for the partner that doesn't have ADHD, there's a frustration feeling like they have to kind of take on the role of parentification because their partner maybe isn't carrying their weight. They've asked them to do something and then that person isn't trying to ignore them. I mean, for me, I just out of sight, out of mind, I would forget. I mean, we had to have a system in place for if you want me to do it, it needs to go on this to-do list in this place, right?
Exactly. The old honey-do list.
Correct.
So we
I
make a list, but we also say please and thank you. And I appreciate that you did that and all these things. Mm-hmm.
So I have a question for you. I am frequently asked because I do a lot of downsizing presentations, or as I like to call them, right sizing, because that's a more appropriate term. If a couple comes and you've got one of the two people who is driven crazy by the clutter And what I always tell people is we do have different clutter tolerance levels, but what would you as a marital therapist advise a couple to do when they do have such different clutter tolerance levels?
Well, I think that really beginning to focus on what is the meaning of the clutter. I think that for a lot of people, there's a backstory. Maybe growing up with not enough stuff or growing up with too much stuff and feeling uncomfortable about stuff. And so I think that people really have to communicate about what is the meaning of this. I'm big on having people take photographs of things and then tossing them, because we want to remember. And
Mhm.
very often I feel like if we're not in possession of something, we can't remember it or we won't remember it. Fortunately, most of us have cameras on our phones. And so it's really quite easy to remember things. But I think that also for folks with ADHD, there is a concern about out of sight, out of mind, not remembering things, not
Mhm.
having what they need and feeling a little panicky about that.
Mhm. I would also say that you didn't bring it up, but it's important to note that not only do we have a different attachment to things, but our accumulation patterns might be based on getting excited about a project, buying everything for that project, moving on to the next project. Or in my case, I would fill something and I'm like, oh, that's not what I'm doing right now. I don't want to go back and pick it up because I'm doing this. And when we have ADHD, we tend to our hyper focus also means that we don't like to transition. So if I'm doing this, don't ask me to do Y, right? So I tell people that they need to pick their battles. For me, it's the kitchen. So I'm willing to let the bedroom be a little messy, but the kitchen is that one space that I want to feel good about because where people congregate when they come into the home makes meal prep easier. So what are other pieces of advice if you have clients that are coming into you to talk to you and you're noticing that ADHD is impacting their relationship? What is your advice for them?
Well, first of all, I think you have to ask the question of have people been diagnosed with ADHD? Because very often people don't know that they're exhibiting either whether it's fidgetiness or whatever they're exhibiting that might be a telltale sign, starting too many projects, not completing things, not putting things away. But maybe they have always done it that way. And we tend to rationalize, oh, I've always done it that way. It's a nothing. And yet, I think it's really important to understand that this is something, and we do all have strengths and we all have patterns. And somehow we need to find some middle of the road way to meet each other. But all about understanding and then accepting our strengths, our lack of strength in certain areas, trying to understand each other, being supportive, giving praise, appreciation, recognizing that our differences are okay. Oh, we all say, hey, vive la different. It's okay to be different. But in point of fact, very often within couples, there's a real strain associated with being different. We want people to be different, but only in the way we want them to be different. We really don't want them to be different from us at all. Uh,
Mhm.
that's
Right.
very stressful.
Okay, so I have a question for you as a therapist. When you're working with somebody, can you generally sense when ADHD is at play when maybe they don't even know it?
Well, I do think that the fidgetiness can be a real problem. It can be a kind of a telltale sign, but also the idea that people will say, hey, I get up, I get going, and I can't stop myself. I just keep going. Or, I start one thing and then I notice there's a little something on the carpet that needs to be picked up right away. But then I find myself cleaning the whole carpet, I'm vacuuming. And then the floor needs a little bit of help too. And by the way, I don't even remember what I started to do, but it's left out there.
Yeah. There was a book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, years ago, but then they turned it into If You Give a Mom a Something. And then she goes like into the laundry room and then she sees something and then she said, oh, and then she takes it to right. And that's such a typical ADHD story. So you had mentioned that you had shared with your clients that you had done this podcast and they were super, what were they saying?
Very excited. First of all, because so many people have been diagnosed later on in life or are just coming to the point where they're saying, can you assess me for ADHD? I mean, I've
Mhm.
done that over the years. And people already are well into their careers and they're well into their lives. And it's just a lot of excitement, especially about the idea about managing the amount of stuff that we have. Talk to them about how you try to right size people and work through the clutter and figure out what the clutter is about and all of that. People just light up like, oh my God, where's this person? I need her.
Well, you could tell them that I'm writing a book just like my cousin.
All right. All right.
Um, yeah. So let me ask you this question. When you are the person that tells your client that they do have ADHD and that they've had it their whole lives, how do they react to that? I mean, is there a general way that people are reacting? I'd love to hear what the response is.
Well, typically, people will ask me to assess them. So I'm not bringing it up. Occasionally I do, but usually people will have an idea that something is up with them, that they just can't quite settle down and focus. And, they're reading things time and time again and it's not sticking and they're kind of struggling through things. So
Mm.
when I do have an opportunity to go over with them, what are the key points to kind of relieved? And then they want to talk about medications and they want to talk about what they can do about it or not do. Do they have to do something? No, it's kind of a scary idea. But if you've been struggling for long enough, it's a welcome relief, I think.
For sure. And definitely mix. I don't know if I had shared with you that I ask the button question. I think I asked you the button question. The button question is if you could press a button and your ADHD would go away, you would never have it, you would never have had it. Would you press that button? Don't answer that question, Jane, because we are going to take a break and we're going to come back.
Are you tired of feeling like you can't get it together? Struggling with clutter that overwhelms you despite your best efforts? Wondering why organization feels impossible while others make it look so easy? You're not alone, and it's not your fault. Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro, host of the Grandma Has ADHD podcast, and I understand exactly what you're going through. I combine my years of hands-on work as founder of Silver Linings Transitions, a move management and home organizing company, together with ADHD coach training and help adults 50 and over connect the dots between ADHD and lifelong struggles. Whether you're downsizing, decluttering, or simply trying to create systems that work for your ADHD brain, I provide virtual and in-person coaching for those in the San Diego area. Together, we'll develop practical strategies that honor how your brain actually works, not how you think it should work. Ready to trade shame for understanding? Visit grandmahasadhd.com or call to schedule a discovery session at 760-607-7377 because it's never too late to finally make sense of your story. Ever wondered why helping a loved one declutter feels like speaking different languages? I did, especially with my mom. It wasn't until I founded Silver Linings Transitions, helping San Diego seniors organize and move for over a decade, that I discovered why. We all experience clutter differently, and for those of us with ADHD, it's a whole other world. If you are listening in the San Diego area and feeling stuck with moving, paperwork, photos, or home organization, our team at Silver Linings Transitions gets it. We understand ADHD's unique challenges, and we won't just help you get organized. We'll create sustainable systems that finally stick. Schedule a consultation with our team today at 760-522-1624. That's 760-522-1624, or find us at silverliningstransitions.com.
And we are back with Dr. Jane Rosen Grandon, who is also a favorite cousin of mine. And Jane, the button question. I asked you before the break if you could press the button that would have taken away your ADHD so that it never existed. Would you press that button?
Sometimes I would say yes. Sometimes I would say no. We've talked a little bit about the fact that I enjoy the energy. I don't enjoy the struggle. I don't enjoy getting in my own way. And I don't enjoy having to be so mindful about what it is I'm doing at every moment so that I can stay on track. I go back and forth with that one.
But you did not answer the question that I asked you, Jane. I asked you, would you press it or not? So you have to decide if the good outweighs the bad.
Does the good outweigh the bad? Well, I don't know. I honestly do not know. I really have taken this question and turned it inside out for myself. I don't know.
And the reality is we can't change it anyway. But I will say, and you tell me this as a therapist, I have heard that one of the natural tendencies of people with ADHD is to be curious, and that being curious as we age is actually a trait that will help us age better. Am I making that up? Or would you say that that's true?
I think that's probably true.
Okay.
I like that. I like the curious factor. See,
I
I
love it.
enjoy a lot of the things that go along with ADHD, the hyperactivity, but not taking it to the point of being manic. That's a whole game. And really important, I think, to be self-aware, because otherwise we can really set ourselves up for some mess.
Sure. I will say one of the best things that has happened for me since I have learned that I have ADHD is the awareness that forgetting is inevitable. Like you think I'm definitely going to remember to do this. And now I set myself up for future, Jami. And just before our podcast, I got a call for work, and we keep a list of everybody who calls in. And I knew that I had to get on this podcast, but I also knew that if I didn't record that conversation, it was going to be gone. And so I took the time, which I didn't want to do because it was distracting me from what I was trying to do, getting online with you. And I paused and I entered that information, and that is setting me up for success. And that's been a huge game changer in terms of my own ADHD discovery. And then, of course, that voice in their head. That's definitely one that I have learned is very big for those of us with ADHD, because we're always getting those messages like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you get it together? Are you lazy? Why are you always losing things? I know for me, and you knew me as a child, the description was too much. I was too much. And it's really hard to feel like you have to tone yourself down to get people to like you, right? And so then you have this voice in your head like, oh, am I being too much? Or analyzing everything that gets said. And no wonder we have so much anxiety.
That's absolutely true. Because I do think that people take a certain liberty with talking about people, whether they are very active or whether they are curious, and turning those into bad things. Especially with, oh, this child's overactive, or this child is hyper. And so there's a lot of criticism that kids hear about themselves. And I think that can be very self-limiting. Kind of alluding to, though, also is the idea of multitasking, and how that just is kind of a no-go at this point. I think a lot of people, especially with attention issues, are realizing that is really setting yourself up for failure as well. And how important it is to kind of slow ourselves down and really just do one thing at a time, or make notes so that we don't forget about those other things that we really need to get back to. So, yeah, it is about setting yourself up for success or failure.
One of the ways that my hyperactivity showed up, and I didn't even realize it until I completed ADHD coaching, is that I would overschedule myself, partly because I was hyperactive and I needed to keep energized and going, but partly because I had a hard time prioritizing what I should be doing. I didn't want to miss anything. And that was taking a toll on my relationship as well, because I wasn't home for dinner most nights. And I was just never like kind of putting the day in a box and being, okay, this is what I could do today. Now I'm going to pause and spend some time.
Yeah, that's a really great observation, because so many of us think that the more we do, the better. And especially if we like our jobs and we like our careers, we have some idea that's going to make us happier and our families happier, when in fact it doesn't always work out that way. They kind of see us as oblivious, perhaps, or not caring. And that's kind of the last thing you're trying to communicate. So
another question for you both, as somebody who's been married for 51 years and as a marriage and family therapist. From what I have understood, that the divorce rate is higher among people with ADHD, but you've been married 51 years. And every time I've ever been around the two of you, the energy between you is amazing. And what do you think is the secret? Or maybe not a secret, but I mean, obviously you've had ADHD in your entire marriage. When did you discover that you had ADHD?
not until after I had kids, my 30s. But I think that certainly having a spouse that appreciates what ADHD is important. But I think even before that, we had a deep kind of appreciation for the fact that we're all going to have individual differences. And
Mhm.
we need to somehow capitalize on those strengths and cover for each other in terms of if I can't do this well, you take it up. Oh, and if you can, that's great. Oh, we got that covered. That's really important, I think, this teamwork idea, because you do have different strengths. And like I said, maybe one of you sees everything, the other one hears everything. You got a good thing going. But to be able to share getting through this life and getting things covered is really important.
I think you guys went into that also. I mean, I just want to point out for people who have seen Jane's name, she hyphenated, and that you were the first person that I ever knew to now, granted, I was 4 years old when you got married, but to hyphenate your name so that you took both names. And Gary did not, though, but your kids did, right? Or no?
No, my kids not. Gary takes Rosen Grandon anytime we're talking about the two of us. So he does use Rosen Grandon. And actually, it's on our checking account. It's Gary Michael Rosen Grandon.
Nice.
Is really nice. But again, that's kind of like an indicator of respect. Respect for both of our names, whether he uses it every day or not. It doesn't matter. There, it's something to be respected.
So, what if you're in a marriage now and maybe, the resentment is building up and you're discovering ADHD and its impact in your relationship? What now?
Well, I think that in discovering that, you're also going to discover that perhaps you've not been attentive to your mate. That can lead to a great deal of misunderstanding. It can lead to being so busy. Oh, I forgot about sex. Oh, yeah, we're supposed to take time to make love. Well, we want it to be spontaneous, so we'll just wait whenever that happens. I think you can't survive that way. I think that it's really important to put sex on the calendar of your life and develop some sort of a rhythm together so that you're really spending adequate time together. I think that time together is everything. Just not ignoring each other and not ignoring the importance of why we fell in love, why we're getting married, why we decided to live together, why we decided to make a family, is remembering it's the two people. And all of us have different needs.
Would you say, and I don't remember if I talked on this in the last episode, but would you say that need for like different and exciting might cause somebody with ADHD to sort of like blow up their marriage because they're looking for drama or they're creating chaos because it's, comfort?
Well, I don't know if it's the creating chaos, but I do think that it is possible, certainly, to blow up a marriage if you're not satisfied, if you're not happy. And that really comes back to communicating your needs sexually, communicating your needs for variety, your needs to be stimulated adequately, your needs to be loved and comforted and supported. And so there's just so much that people have to grow together to do.
Right. One of the things, like I said, that I remembered that you shared with me was that you and Gary had your alone time every day, which used to be the hot tub. Is it still the hot tub?
Yes, we do have our daily hot tub. It is a delight.
Daily. Okay, what time is it daily? And what do you, not the R-rated stuff, but what do you do in the hot tub?
Well, the time of day really varies. On weekends, of course, it's later. Sometimes I'm working. He'll take a hot tub by himself. But sometimes it's a delightful way for us to be face to face. You think about it, you're in the hot tub, there's only 2 or 3 feet between you. You're speaking one on one. It's really taking time together. It's just like sitting there 20 minutes or whatever, and you're taking time for each other. But it's that attention to each other. That's where I think that attention issues can very powerfully advise us and inform us about the need to give each other attention. I think that's what we need in relationships. I think that's what makes people stray is when they don't get adequate attention. And then they begin to get attention from other people. And gee, that's very compelling.
Right, absolutely. But it's interesting. So I'm going to add a part to my book now because I had not considered the inattentiveness of blowing up a marriage. Do you have questions that you and Gary like? Do you have a day affirmation or a question, or is it just a natural flow? I mean, again, 51 years of marriage in this day and age is pretty impressive.
Thank you. I think that we don't ask each other specific questions except for tell me about your day. And I really believe that at the end of the day, you talked about how do you put the day in a box. I think that we all have a need to debrief, kind of put things on the table and look at them and then put them away. but speaking it to someone else and sharing what the day's actually been like, what you actually did is priceless in terms of our ability to remember, to organize, to understand things, to make sense of things, to talk about things, just to kind of walk through your day. I remember
Mm.
dropping my daughter at school, and I'd say at the end of the day, "So tell me, how was school? What'd you do?" And she'd say, "Oh, nothing." "Well, I dropped you off. Like, who'd you talk
Yeah.
to? Where'd you go? What classroom were you in? Who's the teacher today? What'd you study first? Say the Pledge of Allegiance. What else did you do? What time was PE? Or what time was lunch?" I want to know details. And that kind of gets you in the habit of talking through your day so that, again, you can kind of organize your thoughts and also learn about the other because you've been gone from each other for 10, 12 hours, whatever. That's a lifetime. That's a whole day of stuff that has gone on. And to really know each other, you kind of have to know those kind of details and be included to feel,
Mhm.
to value each other's experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we definitely want to feel heard and understood and seen and all of those things. And having a partner that says, hey, you matter. Well, what your day looked like matters. And yeah, it's been game changing for me. I mean, it's unfortunate that it took a divorce and a diagnosis and all of that stuff to realize it. But I guess, as they say, when you know better, you do better. Any other advice that you want to leave our listeners with as we're wrapping up part 2 of the Jami podcast episode?
Well, the only other thing that we really haven't touched upon too much is about work and about career and job satisfaction and finding your own niche and finding a place in the workforce where you can really exercise your own talents.
Mhm.
And that is in terms of keeping your attention to detail, your attention to the task, wanting to interact with those people, do that kind of work is really finding yourself in a job
Mhm.
that is satisfying, is stimulating, keeps you excited, and makes you want to get up in the morning and go there.
So, I mean, how late do you see people with ADHD if you're working, like, work in terms of, like, I know you're in your 70s, right? I can't believe that. How old are your patients that have ADHD that are still working?
Well, I have all kinds of people who are still working, but I'm thinking mostly about people in their 30s and 40s who, or even 50s or 60s, who have been doing a job that they hate and they're not happy in it. And it does not exercise their talents and it doesn't stimulate them and make them want to grow. Or they love the work, but they really hate the people because they're being mistreated and they need to become more assertive or whatever. And I think it's true through the lifetime. And people may want to do a certain job for a certain number of years, but then go, I'm a little tired of this. I want something different. And I think that it's important to be able to have the support for good. What do you want to do? What do you want to do different? Do you want to go back to school? What job you're looking at? What's interesting? Allow each other to grow, encourage that growth.
Mhm.
Because about having an attention issue is that you want to grow. It's like I always think about like eating new information all the time, or hungry information all the time. And that when we get bored, we tend to chew on the past. We tend to bring up things to ourselves that didn't go so well, or things we're mad about, or things that didn't get resolved. Oh, and so I think it's really important to keep ourselves growing in the right direction.
It's so interesting. I hadn't thought of that one too, but I remember my ex-husband, or as I like to call him, my husband, when I was starting my business, told me that my business was like my boyfriend because it was taking me away and I was very focused on it. Him, I absolutely owned and I did not give him the attention that he needed or deserved. And again, lots of mistakes made along the way.
What
Hearing
I will remember that term.
all these things you're learning from me.
All these things. Mhm.
Well, I am so grateful, Dr. Jane Rosen Grandon, that you wanted to join me again on my pod. It's very validating. You know, when you have known someone your entire life, right? And they've seen you grow up, for them to say, hey, kiddo, because I think you still call me that every once in a while. And you're doing a great thing over there. It means a lot. You're not just some random stranger that's validating me. You're someone who's seen the journey.
And I love what you're doing. I really do. I think that more and more I see people who really need help with organizing and managing. And I love what you are doing to help people right size or to make a transition to a new living environment. And I think it's important work, good work.
Well, I want to complete what you just said. I think it's really important to anybody who's listening to know that it's important that you not just hire an organizer, because an organizer is going to come in, it's going to be a one and done, and then you're just going to repeat your patterns. You have got to either hire somebody who understands ADHD and is going to help come up with the systems that are going to work for you, or you need to go to an organizer who is trained in ADHD. And I recommend the ICD, the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. People can find them in their areas. And until my book is out, and once my book is out, I still think a lot of people will need at least the organizer to help them get started, but then they'll be able to understand it and maintain the systems. But that is not out yet. So
Good
anyway.
work.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for listening to today's episode of Grandma Has ADHD. If you like what you heard, which I hope that you did, please comment wherever you listen to your podcast, share it with your friends and family, and join me at the Grandma Has ADHD Facebook page, because when you discover that you are not alone and you can find a community of other people who understand you, it is amazing how much better you feel about the journey. So thanks so much. Thanks, Cousin Jane.
You, Jami.
The opinions expressed on Grandma Has ADHD podcast are those of our guests and hosts and are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content discussed in this episode is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The hosts, guests, and producers of Grandma Has ADHD do not assume any liability for the content of this podcast. Listen at your own discretion.